All right. We good? We good?
I don't know. Are we good?
I don't know. I don't know if it's just me. Like I was just looking at my screen. Hey, well, guys, I
How's
think we're live. Do you guys see me? Do you guys see Ricardo? So we've already said rest in peace to TikTok, and now it's back.
yeah? It was really quick, huh?
I thought about changing the thumbnail, but it's like, I mean, this is the reason we decided to come live. I guess maybe we can kind of share our personal experiences with TikTok. I think that's kind of like I played on my my Instagram story. I was playing the Bittersweet Symphony by the Verve, because I was like, because I really don't love TikTok, but I'm sure you have similar feelings about it. But yeah, I don't want it to be banned. What are your
No,
thoughts?
no. I mean, absolutely not. I mean, it's just another way for people to connect and get your information out. And I know we've talked about this before, but I didn't know what TikTok was at first, and I thought it was just a bunch of little people doing dances and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really dumb. But then when I started seeing a lot of good information on there, it really struck my interest. And at the time when I got into TikTok was pretty much the same time when I couldn't find anything on YouTube. And so I've always been like a YouTube guy, like watching videos. And I really miss when, like, probably 10 years ago, when you could actually go onto YouTube and you could just find like the most amazing documentaries and just true information. And now those things are kind of hard to find nowadays. But I think that's why I gravitated to TikTok at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so when I first started, and it was actually probably right after,
Hey,
uh,
Ricardo,
yeah,
I think we need to adjust the volume here. Let me hit stop on here, and I'll.
is it on my end?
Yeah, we're gonna try to turn you up a little bit.
Oh, turn me up. Let's see.
All right,
Let's,
tell me, guys in the chat. Give us
let me see. It's kind of like frozen on my end.
Yeah, I think it's gonna pop back up.
You think so?
All right, let's.
Someone said not coming through.
I think we're probably. I think we're back on now, right?
Yeah, it looks like, yeah, it looked like it unfroze.
All right. Or do we sound? Can you guys hear us? See us? We back? We back? How do we sound? Okay, mic check
Back.
1 2.
Mic check 1 2. Do we sound good? It says you sound great.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
we are good. We are good.
Okay.
We are back. Okay.
All right. Cool.
So yeah, good. Finish what you were saying. How you gravitated toward TikTok?
Yeah. So TikTok kind of has a soft spot for me. And like I said, I've always been a YouTube guy, and it was hard to find real information. Probably like around 2019 and 2020, they really started suppressing a lot of information for obvious reasons. But we we just couldn't find good information, like I said. And then I came to TikTok and I was like, whoa, it's not what I thought, because I thought it was just the little kids dancing or
Mm,
whatever.
mm-hmm.
And then so like the first time that I had TikTok, I quickly learned that if you just straight out talk about politics and exposing those types of people, that you won't last very long, because I didn't even have a big following the first time. It was maybe like 3 to 5,000, and then I just got completely shadow banned just because of the information that I was putting out. And so I was trying to be a little more wise as the way that I present the information, to where we can still get it out there, despite them trying to censor and really suppress the information. And honestly, I'm going to just put it out there, because it's not like we are not talking about it as if we're trying to hide it. It's the fact that if we wanna use this mega platform, we're gonna reach hundreds of thousands of more people on YouTube than if you go to Rumble, let's just be honest.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean it's just like Jesus said, "Be wise as serpents." So how do we do that in order to still get the message out and not get censored? And it's not like we don't know about that information. It's not like we're trying to
Yeah.
suppress it. If you
Mm-hmm.
wanna if you wanna listen to something like that, then go to my Spotify and I'll talk about it there. But you come to YouTube and we're trying to still reach an audience without getting shadow banned because have been shadow banned bad. And I know you've got experiences with that too. And my most recent main page on TikTok, it was around 190,000 at one time.
Hmm.
And then I just got completely shadow banned and now I'm like at 180. So I like lost a whole bunch of followers where TikTok is sending me notifications like I'm gaining all these followers while at the same time I'm losing them all. So it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think I kind of I have a little bit of a soft spot for TikTok, even though it's like sometimes I feel like when I was on that app, I was like a not to be insensitive or trigger anybody, but yeah, I felt like a battered housewife because it was like just keep coming back. Oh, they're gonna treat me right this time. But I mean, I think without TikTok, I might not be on YouTube right now. Well, actually, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be on YouTube. I don't know. Maybe I would have went a different route, but I guess TikTok gives a lot of people the ability to grow a audience really fast. And like you would, I'm sure like obviously as Ricardo knows, trying to grind it out on YouTube, it's like I think that without his TikTok platform, it would have been difficult. It would have been even more difficult because like how would you have I'm sure you've got people to go from TikTok to YouTube.
Right.
And then so you already had a little you have a lot of you started out on a higher level than most people who just if they just became YouTubers with no reach at all before that.
Hmm.
So that being said, yeah, I think that was the coolest thing about TikTok is that I made a couple videos when I had hardly any followers, like literally none. Like I had my daughter, I had like my brother, and I think I had like my cousin or something like that. I mean, I literally had 3 followers. And so you make one video and then all of a sudden you have 1,000. You're like, oh gosh. And then, in 1,000 at that point in my life was just like, oh my gosh, 1,000?
I know.
Of course, now that we get a little bit obsessed with the numbers. So it's kind of like that. I feel like that God has used that app, which is so flawed
It
to
is.
it's almost like it just encouraged me enough. And it's like I know that McCarter's the same way. If you could like go back and look at our early videos, you're like, oh gosh, it's pretty cringe. It's like, did that video deserve to get that many views? And I don't know. Obviously, it's up to you guys to say yes or no. But it was kind of like that. You felt like a push at that point. You had
Hmm.
the tailwind, and then you started to move on. But yeah, then what TikTok has done, especially to guys like us, that you know, y- I probably talk about similar things that I've always have. I mean, obviously we've evolved in the way we talk about things and the more we've learned. But I've always tried to, like, I feel like it's like the submit to the authorities. So if they say you can't say this, like I wasn't out there rubbing it in their faces saying I'm going to say whatever I want. I think that that's kind of yeah, that's a bit foolish. I mean, there's times where you do have to say I don't care what's going to happen. I'm going to say this. But for the most part, it's like there's a lot of information that you weren't allowed to talk about that a lot of people were talking about already. So I feel like that the main goal for us is obviously to lead people to Christ eventually, along the way. So if I can't talk about Jesus on these apps, well then I'm just going to talk about Jesus anyways. And then whatever, what will come of that will be, it's like up to God about that.
Right.
But so you don't want to get banned by talking about medical stuff when you could have been reaching people,
Yeah.
the whole way.
That's
And then
exactly my point.
yeah, so I mean I think that we've used these things the best we can. And it's funny, we talked recently about this young brother, Patrick, and he's like 19 years old and he's got on TikTok and we were obviously encouraging him to like diversify already. Like, before you just do it, like just start putting videos out on other things. And I think that it's a very accessible way to start. Out of all the other apps, I believe that's the best. That's probably the best one just to dip your toes in the water. So I would definitely hate for people like him to lose the opportunity of growing a platform there and kind of learning, So I think that's the main thing. And so like obviously I'm against censorship, but I'm also pretty against the way that TikTok handles its content creators because it's a joke sometimes.
Yeah, it is. But another thing, I wouldn't have met you if it wasn't for TikTok.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have met Shane, which he does podcasts with me now. I wouldn't have met a lot of great people if it wasn't for TikTok. And so it's just another way to connect with each other. And that's what I like most about all of this, because right now, like this is my church. This is my fellowship, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. And so it's cool because you can meet like-minded people on these platforms, and you become actual friends with these people. Like, I would consider you my friend.
Yeah, for sure.
And some people, they just have the total wrong mentality. Like, if me and you are just talking a lot, it's like, oh, we're in on this little plot or something, and like we're trying to like take over the world, like Pinky in the Brain or something. And and it's just, no, it's not like that. Like, it's hard to find people that you can talk to these things about. And when you find someone you like, and you want to talk to your friend, I
Hmm.
mean, that's just the most common thing. And I just think that because we are putting this content out, like, people may get like the wrong idea about us. And that's why I had brought up the whole thing at the beginning. Like, it's not like we're trying to um, hold back any information. There's other platforms that you can avail yourself to, and you can get that information from me. But on YouTube, I'm trying to be wise. That way, we can still be on here and reach a lot of people. Because what's a point in having a great message that no one hears?
Yeah.
It's no point.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, anyways, obviously, everyone in the chat saying that Trump restored TikTok, and I was reading it that this morning that the plan was that he was going to put in a 90-day stay. So, like, it's not. I mean, it's on life support right now. So, I guess if they don't come up with a solution in 90 days, then it will be gone. Um, I mean, I'm guessing that they're going to do that. I guess there's going to be a solution, and that's why maybe I'm hopeful that maybe it can be better. Because I'll say this, for short videos, I still think TikTok, if you weren't creating videos and you weren't frustrated with the process, TikTok is the best video to probably watch. If you're just like passively just watching videos and liking and sharing and commenting, it's the best. I think it's the best. It's way better than Facebook. It's way better than Instagram.
It is.
Um, Obviously, I think YouTube's a superior platform because you don't have to spoon feed everything to people. You can actually give it to them in long form content. But
Yeah, and if
but
it wasn't for TikTok, we wouldn't have YouTube Shorts, we wouldn't have
y-
Facebook Reels, we wouldn't have Instagram Reels, because TikTok really was taking over, and so in order for these companies to compete, they had to go and conform to the short form content. So if it wasn't for TikTok, we wouldn't have Facebook Reels.
somebody mentioned Vine, so I guess Vine was like, how long were the Vine videos? Were they like 10 seconds or less or something like that? They were
I don't
super.
remember that.
Yeah, that was like that was a blink and it was over kind of a thing. But I think it's funny. It's like I think like like Jake Paul and Logan Paul. I think that those guys were big on Vine. There was a lot of people that eventually went when that app got shut down. They went to YouTube. I
Right.
mean, praise the Lord. I think that the guys like Ricardo and I, let's just say that TikTok does get fully banned, which again I don't really support. But I mean, I think that if you're on TikTok right now and you haven't tried to set up a plan for when it does go away, potentially,
Diversify.
yeah, you're like, it's kind of like you should have known better. I mean, like if you get caught flat-footed, it's really kind of on you at that point. So I would say that, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and obviously, it is a little bit troubling to think that our government could just shut down any of these platforms like that,
Mhm.
justifying it however they will about like it's spyware or something like that. Like places like Facebook didn't get caught like sharing our data and all that stuff already. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that. It's funny. We on the last JT's mixtape, the guy who did a video about the Pokemon stuff and like the three-letter agencies that were using that to make like basically get us to videotape and get him to make like a 3D maps of every place. And so what he said at the end of the video is he said that if you have a product that's free, it's because the product is you. Like
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
like, so you think about all these kind of apps, if it's free, yeah, so don't be surprised when like, oh, TikTok's taking my data and doing this with it. It's like, yeah, they're probably selling it to lots of merchants at the
Yeah.
very least because, oh, this person likes to watch this. I mean, of course, everybody is probably aware who's watching this video that when you just say something out loud and all of a sudden you see an ad for it, like you didn't even type it into a search engine. You were talking about it in your home, and all of a sudden you get these targeted ads. You're like, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that is kind of like the price of doing business as far as like all the technology we have is that yeah it can be used for a benefit to us, but overall obviously the people who are giving it to us for free are they're monetizing whatever that free
Th
thing is.
Yeah, because you know what? They are truly interested in human psychology, and that's the whole purpose with all of this stuff. They're collecting data from us, and they're using it because they're interested in how does the mind work? How do people react in this situation or that? And so they're collecting a lot of information, I believe, in order to use it against us because there are instances, where that's the case, and they've done some studies about human psychology, and it's crazy what the human mind would do in order to like obey a authority figure, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, at the very least it feels like when, especially when I think TikTok probably first came out, and what was like the max video back in the day was like a minute or less. Maybe it was even
Yeah,
less
yeah,
than that.
it might have been 60 seconds and under.
Yeah, so if that's what they were kind of training people, like, well, I mean, you just think about like our brains have been retrained to be bored like almost instantly by videos because there's an endless supply of them. So it's like, well, that's not really catching my fancy right now. So scroll, scroll,
Hmm.
scroll, scroll. Like that's the way we do it. So I mean, obviously it ends up coming back on us where like we really have to try to make this information really interesting, like and try to continue to hook people to try to get
Yeah.
them to watch to the end and things like that. And that's maybe that's a little inside baseball, but I think overall what I'm trying to say is that like we don't know even know, I mean, we have an idea what the generation of people who grow up with TikTok, like
Mm.
how short that attention span is, especially when you're young. It's already short, but it's continued to shorten our attention span. So they, yeah, obviously that's why I would guess that most of the people who really like the long form content on YouTube, they're generally a little bit older. You're
Yeah.
not getting the super young people into that because it's like I forgot I was talking to somebody the other day and they were like, "Yeah, this one podcast was over an hour long." I was like, "Only an hour?" It's
I
like,
know. I know,
yeah. So
that's
like, I
funny.
mean, so that for some people, it's like that's crazy long. But it's funny. I remember talking to this audience, and I said, "What do you guys think the ideal length of a YouTube video should be?" And I was the most often answer I got was 2 hours, and I was like,
2 hours.
"Dang."
I know, that's crazy. But I agree that they're trying to shorten our attention span, and if you can't stay focused, then you can't absorb information. And I know, you know, Alex Jones, he's InfoWars, but I mean, in a sense, it's right. It's information wars. I mean, and if you can't hold someone's attention for long enough to where you can like give them information, then that's a problem because they're very limited in their thinking, because if it's not like sparkly and catching their eye, then they just lose interest right away.
Yeah. So look, I'm gonna whine and Ricardo's gonna whine with me here though. But the thing about like it's the unintended consequences. So everyone's all like, oh well, TikTok's back, so crisis averted, it's all fine. Well, when TikTok got banned, it banned our editing app. So I guess CapCut was from like the same business, the same software company that made TikTok. So when they banned TikTok, they banned our editing software. And
Hmm.
and yeah, so obviously, guys like Ricardo and I, we started on TikTok. So this was the app you could use to kind of pre-edit your video before you were going to upload it to TikTok. And eventually, I realized I'm going to start uploading these to Instagram. And then when Facebook had Reels, I started uploading them to them. Then I was uploading them to YouTube. So I made sure that I, for the main reason I did that was because I didn't want TikTok's watermark on it when it was my video that I made it. So
Exactly.
I bought so we end up, like, obviously guys like Ricardo and I, we edit a lot. So we bought the professional one, it's not a ton of money, but I mean, it's some money. And so, yeah, so when I'm trying to make podcasts for you guys, like literally it was like, oh, TikTok got banned. And then I'm trying to go to bed. My brother texts me, oh yeah, by the way, CapCut got banned. And so yesterday
Did your heart drop?
it did, because I had, so here's spoilers, guys. And you guys are going to be excited about this. So the newest JT's mixtape, I got my buddy Max Powers from Parasite TV on, and we recorded like 2.5 hours. So I was sitting in the chair all day yesterday, just editing this podcast off and on. And so I probably spent a good 6 hours probably editing this podcast. And I'm at my laptop, not plugged in. And so I'm about to hit export. And I was actually, I made it in one big podcast, but I'm going to cut it into two. That's more spoilers. So I was going to cut it into two, but I uploaded it as one I was going to export it as one. But right when I was going to export, my laptop died. So then I went upstairs, plugged it in, and then I got invited over to some friend's house to watch the sports ball game. I used to be a big Redskins fan, so they're playing the Lions, or the Commanders were. And I went out, watched the game, and then meanwhile, we're literally watching, I'm showing TikTok videos to my friends. And then later it's like, oh, it's not working. And then, yeah, I get home and I'm like, I didn't export that video. And then praise God, I opened it up and it had exported. But the whole day I've been scrambling because the software does not work. So I was trying to break it into two, but I can't. So I'm trying to like get new programs, try to learn these programs. It's a mess. I mean, the truth be told, that I think Ricardo and both of this is not our day job. We have real jobs, but we do this on the side. But there's lots of people who make their livings doing this kind of stuff. And so the government, so it's like the unintended consequences of like, they could say, oh, well, they should get real jobs or whatever. I hear these callous people, but it's like editing and doing all that stuff is a real job.
It's a lot of work.
And so, yes, you can imagine all the people who really were relying on TikTok, not maybe necessarily for their primary income, but like additional income. And as everyone knows, everything's crazy expensive. So there's a lot that goes into this when they just decide to ban an app, which ends up being like 5 apps. Like that, again, people don't even know. Like I said, you're not even a TikTok user necessarily, and you use an editing software. And so the government one day decides, well, you can't use that. And now you got to buy one that's like literally like $1,000 a year to make up for it.
Yeah, it's a mess. And I didn't know about that, I think, until you said it. I was like, what? Wait. And I just think that hurts my feelings a little more than the TikTok, because
Yeah.
it's and a lot of people may not realize that, but just coming from our side, it is a lot of work to edit. I mean, sometimes we're in front of this computer all day. Sometimes I am, and so yeah, I mean, to have a software where it's kind of ease of use, like I've really gotten used to it, and so I'm real comfortable with it, and so even with me being comfortable with this app, it still takes forever to edit. So I mean, I couldn't even imagine if I had to learn an entire new software.
You might have to. I guess that's
yeah,
the
it
thing.
kind of hurts my feelings.
So TikTok is back online, which I was like, okay, well, I'm hitting refresh on the editing app. Okay, does this work? No, it doesn't. So the editing software still doesn't work. And obviously, I'm sure a lot of people, like you said, they probably don't care as much about the inside. They don't want to know how the sausage is made necessarily. But here's the thing. I'm trying to make sure that the sausage is ready for tomorrow night. And obviously I've been trying to put out videos at a certain rate for you guys because that's just what I'm trying to do. So having to now scramble, and like, I'm sure you guys know, especially if you guys follow me on social media as well, that like I make the podcast and then usually I put out another YouTube video and then I'm like making reels on top of that. So I'm using this software all the time.
Yeah.
And to try to learn it. And as tomorrow's Monday and I'll be going back to work, Like not to YouTube studios. I'm going to go to my job. So I don't really necessarily have a lot of time to learn another app and also invest in another app.
Yeah,
It like
because
I
it's
said,
taken
it sucks.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's taken years for me to just of using this to kind of get comfortable with it. So yeah, I'm not happy about that because not only that, but we paid for it.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
like I still got some time left on my contract here.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
So
So you want to get into, so do you think that this Trump thing is like that Trump automatically came right back in, saved the day? Do you think that that was a scripted thing?
yeah, I was kind of thinking that like more this morning because I was just trying to process it all and and I was like this like because it had in the original message. Do you want to pull that up?
Yeah,
It
I
said
can
something about I think I have a screenshot of it too, but just the way that it was worded,
yeah,
it
let's pull that
was
up.
okay. Yeah, I found it, but I'll let you pull it
Oh
up
no,
so I
go
can see
you
it.
go ahead. You go ahead and
Okay,
read it.
okay, so it's saying sorry, TikTok isn't available right now. A law banning TikTok has been enacted in the US. Unfortunately, that means you can't use TikTok for now. We are fortunate that President Trump has uh, indicated, sorry, that he will work with us on a solution to reinstate TikTok once he takes office. Please stay tuned. But just the way that it was written there, like we are fortunate that President Trump, this wonderful man, our guy, Mr. Trump, you know what I'm saying? And so that kind of like made me think of, yeah, this is kind of weird. And then when it reinstated it, it said, "Welcome back. Thanks for your patience and support. As a result of President Trump's efforts, TikTok is back in the US. Oh, thank you. You can continue to create, share, and discover all the things you love on TikTok." But it's just it's just like, oh, Trump is working, and then it's like, oh, thank God for President Trump. We have TikTok now.
I'll wait till he reinstates CapCut to get really excited.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I don't think that it's 5D chess where like he literally had Biden sign this law just so he could reverse it. I do think that overall, I mean, Trump is for more speech. So like obviously the guys like I think I can be critical of them and I can also say when they do something good because I think that that's why I said like that I've tried to do more stuff on X because Elon allows more free speech. That does not mean I co-sign on everything that Elon does and it doesn't mean I co-sign on everything Trump does
Right.
because I think in general like this doesn't seem unusual for what he would do because obviously that for better for worse, these guys are trying to champion the idea of free speech. But then I think they're talking out of both sides of their mouths when they talk about like anti-Semitism laws and stuff like that. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like they do overall push that message. I mean, I don't. Isn't it kind of funny though that you have like the Supreme Court that obviously Trump gets all this credit for putting all these conservative justices up there, and they're the ones who basically upheld the ban. Like how is
Yeah.
this okay in America? I think that's the thing. It's like that we're so far from like true free speech now in this country
Oh,
because
yeah.
they can really say, oh well, you can't say that though. Like you can't have this kind of free speech because it might be misinformation. But the truth of the matter is that like I'm not claiming to speak for the government. Like it'd be one thing if I was dressing up like a government official and lying to people like they do. And they were trying to say, well, that's misinformation. That's really not true. But like lots of things that we would get in trouble for misinformation on like apps like TikTok. I mean, they're literally like, it's my opinion.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, okay, so, well, how valid is this guy right here's opinion? As valid as you guys think it is. I mean, obviously, it's like you guys probably wouldn't be agreeing. I'm not here to replace the news. I'm here to obviously, you guys get to share in my journey toward the truth. And I could get things wrong, and that's why I often say on all these podcasts that do not just trust me. So if
Yeah.
I give you that caveat, like that, obviously you can tell when I'm theorizing, obviously biblical stuff, like I might be a little more sure about things, but man, yeah, we really have lost what it is to just be able to give our opinions and give our concerns about legislation and obviously government responses to things. But obviously, we get into like the stuff about like the fires in California and stuff, and it's like, yeah, these government officials are being really sketchy. So it's not really. I'm not here to say I know exactly what's going on, but I mean, I think that isn't free speech about holding like our government accountable.
Yeah.
So if we're wrong, well then come out with information that proves us wrong.
Yeah, and
But
I
they
got
don't.
some.
But they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I got something for you because this is old. This is since the apostles were still walking this earth, and I was reading Acts this morning, and they were going out and preaching the word of God, and they said, "You can't preach or teach in this name."
Hmm.
If you
Hmm.
guys remember, they're like, "No, you can't say that." And they said, "Well, you be the judge whether it be right to obey men or God. But as for us, we're going to keep preaching this name because they said we can't help but see, or we can't help but speak the things that we've
Hmm.
seen and heard. It's like you can't stop me from saying this." And so this is old. And I was thinking of, watch, I was looking for it and I found it, where they were wanting to kill them. They threw them in prison and everything. And it says, then stood there up one, this is Acts 5:34. Then stood up one in the council, a Pharisee named Gamaliel, a doctor of the law, had in reputation among all the people, and commanded to put the apostles forth a little space, and said unto them, Ye men of Israel, take heed to yourselves what ye intend to do as touching these men. For before these days rose up Theudas, boasting himself to be somebody, to whom a number of men, about 400, joined themselves, who was slain, and all, as many as obeyed him, were scattered and brought to naught. After this man rose up Judas of Galilee in the days of the taxing, and drew away much people after him. He also perished, and all, even as many as obeyed him, were dispersed. And now I say unto you, refrain from these men and let them alone. For if this counsel or this work be of men, it will come to naught. But if it be of God, ye cannot overthrow it, lest haply ye be found even to fight against God. So, I mean, that's what they're afraid of, really, because it's like, if this is really something, then it's gonna take off pretty much. And so that's why they still have the same playbook today, where they want to suppress information.
Hmm. Same people doing it too, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is interesting too. It's funny, actually. I I last year, again, I'm doing my read through the Bible study, and I'm in the book of Exodus again. And I cut a little reel last year about this, and I always think this is good. It's a good message. I don't know if this exactly relates, but I thought it was cool, like when Moses is having this conversation with God about like going to tell the Pharaoh to let his people go. And so Moses is really concerned about how he's not eloquent, and
Mhm.
he doesn't have circumcised lips, and he doesn't really know how to talk. And the funny part is, like, so Moses is so worried that he cannot convince Pharaoh. And that was never God's goal. It was like God's goal was like literally the opposite, because it's like it doesn't matter how good Moses was about speech and convincing someone, because like God was literally going to harden Pharaoh's heart. And I think the important part of that story is just going and do what God asked you to do, because you really not
Mhm.
necessarily know what his intention is. So like it was, and I also think it was kind of funny that, so he's like, God's finally like, fine, your brother is good at talking, I'm going to get him to go with you. But then if you read the book of Exodus, like Aaron hardly ever says anything to the Pharaoh. It's always Moses doing it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, so he's like there, I guess he's just there for moral support, because it's like Moses is doing all the talking eventually. And yeah, obviously Pharaoh does not listen to Moses, and that was literally God's intention. And through that, God showed off his power. So it wasn't Moses that was glorified, it was God.
Yeah. And just bringing back to that point, like you were saying that, if they say this, it might be misinformation, but if it's stupid information, then it's not gonna catch steam, if it's not true, if it's
Hmm.
just some idiot saying something, then it's nothing's gonna be of it. I mean, do people still believe that birds are like robots or drones or something like that? Like, like,
Some do.
yeah.
I think Ceiling Fan Man. I think he thinks pigeons are sus.
Yeah, so I mean,
And pandas, of course.
yeah, so I mean, I know that there's some crazy theories out there, but some of them just don't take off because for whatever reason. But I feel like if it's hard, solid evidence of something, it's gonna take off no matter what. It's like, when you like shake up a bottle of Coke or something and you just kind of twist the lid off, and it's just like nothing's gonna stop it from coming out
Hmm.
once you kind of cracked it. And that's what I feel like is like the true information is going to rise to the top ultimately. But in the meantime, they still have that cap on top trying to squish it down, and it's
Hmm.
still
Hmm.
oozing out the sides, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's about to explode. What's
Yeah.
interesting, the other component of this is, what do you think about the timing of like Zuckerberg going on like Rogan and some of these other shows and saying, "No, I'm all for free speech. I want it to be just like Elon's platform. I was against what they were trying to do to us during the pandemic. I'm not like these guys. Check it out. I let my hair get a little curly. I've got a chain on. I look like I've been working out a little bit. I'm totally normal. I'm totally like you guys now." And then the next week, TikTok's getting banned. So where are people going to go if TikTok gets banned? Well, of course they're going to go to the Meta platforms. Which
Yeah.
again, I'm on the Meta platform, so I'm not. I'm actually I'm live on Facebook right now. Um, you know, I think that's the thing. It's like, yeah, that does seem a little bit coordinated. It's kind of weird though that when when it comes to these other apps, like we typically have a face behind the big old monster that it is. So
Mhm.
obviously, we know Zuckerberg runs Instagram and Facebook. He runs a few other ones too. I'm not even sure exactly all the ones that
Yeah, I don't
Facebook
know.
owns. But then yeah, so obviously now you have X and you have Elon. Like, that's the thing. We really don't know like who is behind TikTok. And obviously what they tried to make it seem like, oh, it's the CCP. It's like all these, these nefarious agents who are trying to do this. But what's funny is that the response that the typical TikTok user has taken is that they haven't said, "Oh, well, we'll just fine. We're just going to suck it up and we're going to go over to the Meta platforms." No, actually, they've gone the complete other way where they're like, "No, we're actually going to download this Chinese app called Red Note or Red Book. It's like literally a Chinese app, and it actually has the Chinese subtitles, I guess." And it's really interesting, this whole scenario where now TikTok users are going on a literal Chinese app and they're interacting with people from China. And I think it's the results. I mean, at least from what I've heard, I did download it. It's like one of the most downloaded apps in the App Store now. That
Wow, I didn't
the
even know about
average,
this.
yeah, the average Chinese citizen. So that now like Americans are interacting with Chinese people, and did it's kind of like we're told about the communist countries and the propaganda and all the stuff against their, the misinformation or the government information, that that's used against their people. But it sort of seems like that people are like, wait a minute, the average Chinese citizen does not live kind of like what we have been taught in the West, like they live. And it kind of only makes sense that, yeah, obviously you're not telling us the truth about this and how the Chinese live and what the things cost and how they live in day to day. And what's really fascinating too is that TikTok is banned in China.
What?
Yeah, they don't have it. They don't have TikTok in China. So like and
That's
supposedly they're banning it for the same reasons why we were trying to ban it.
Well,
Not
I
me,
had
but I
heard
mean,
before that, in like we were getting a different algorithm here in the US than they would in China. I don't know if you heard that, where like we would get the stupid videos where people are playing pranks on themselves, but over in China and stuff, they were getting like educational videos that are teaching them real stuff and just not something to for them to go brain dead over.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's like that. If all you want to do is use these apps to watch cat videos, I think that's your right as American to do that. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, I guess the more troubling thing is that our normal our the typical school system that our kids go to now, where it's like it's really not teaching them practical information anymore, and it's like
Yeah.
the school model is broken. So it's kind of like let kids be kids. Let them watch goofy videos and do dumb dances in their free time. But I'm more concerned about the fact that they're not teaching these kids any life skills. You know,
Yeah.
like the school model, the college model is totally broken. You know, and it's like obviously you see the people who come back like the generation Y and Z people who've come out of college and how different that they are and just like how just unprepared for life, you know, that they should be. So I'm more concerned about that. It's like cuz yeah, I don't necessarily want the kids to be programmed like robots to be a certain way. And I think that's kind of what
Yeah.
we've been taught about the Chinese, which again, maybe that's not true. I don't know. I don't know what we can really believe at this point because it's almost like, oh, the government's using, you know, trying to control information. It's like, well, our government does that. It's like, but
Yeah.
they would tell you they don't. But I mean, obviously we know that they do.
Yeah, exactly. And you were saying earlier about, there's always a face for like these big apps and stuff. And even with SpaceX, you got Elon too. And then what's that the other one where that guy from the UK, he owns another space,
Oh, are you talking about
that billionaire guy.
yeah, Richard Branson? Is
Yeah,
that
and there's
right?
like, yeah,
Virgin?
you got Richard Branson and all these people who are these like multi-billionaires, blah, 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 whatever.
Mhm.
And honestly, I think they're all actors. That's just my stance. I think a lot of them are just actors. They're paid actors. They're the face of the company, but they don't own a majority stake in the company. If you look up in the stocks, there's this one website, I forget what it's called. It might be like AZ stocks or something. You type in any company, I don't care what it is, if it's Amazon, if it's Ford Motor Company, just anything. The major shareholder in every single one of these companies is always the same three companies. It's BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. It's one of those three.
Mhm.
And what's crazy is when you look up who owns them, they each own each other. It's like they gobble each other up. But
Yeah.
so it's kind of hard to tell who's who, but it's always those three. And so I when you got we got like what should I say, an illusion of like competition, like Coke and Pepsi, like they're owned by the same company. I mean, it doesn't matter. They all own this everything. That's what I'm
Y
trying to say.
yeah, I think that guys like Elon and Bill Gates and Zuckerberg, if you actually really look into their histories, they are credited as like they're geniuses who invented things. But like if you actually really like look detailed into it, it's like they didn't invent anything.
Yeah.
It's kind of like these people kind of bought other people out and it was like their idea. You know, so they
Yeah.
invented these things. But if you actually look down, I think another example of that is Steve Jobs.
Hmm.
Everyone thinks that Steve Jobs created all the
Apple.
iPhone stuff
Yeah.
and everything, but it's like you look back and it's like, no, these guys are more like, yeah, the public face of the
Yeah.
whatever happened behind them. And if you see like how much these guys have been subsidized by, those guys are the real force
Yeah.
behind all this stuff. So it's kind of like that. I was always really surprised, like that Elon Musk was obviously rich. I mean, he came from
Yeah.
money.
He supposedly started eBay too. I don't know if you knew that. Did you know
It
that?
I've never heard that. I thought
Yeah.
he was involved in PayPal.
It was both. It was
Okay.
eBay first, and then it was PayPal. He, like, sold one off and started another. And if you, like, look at the, documentaries on him, it's, like, saying, like, yeah, like what you're saying, "Oh, he's a genius and this and that," and dude can't even speak 3 sentences without looking like a weirdo, you know what I'm saying? And it's all of them. Even Zuckerberg, he looks like a cyborg, He doesn't
Yeah,
even look like
mhm.
a real person. It's just like, who are these people that they find, And
He's like Zuckerberg is like that meme that was going around about how, like, in the first Terminator, when it was talking about how, like, the new ones look almost more human, and it was, of course, it was, like, showing an old picture of Zuckerberg versus, like, the new one, because
even
it's like,
Jeff
yeah.
Bezos.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that all of them seem like, well, if you really think about it, like that, when you're talking about the amount of money that they supposedly have, we know who has all the money in the world.
Yeah.
Well, we know, but they don't advertise who has all the money. So, like
Yeah.
when they say that Elon's the richest man in the world, we know that's not true,
No.
because the richest man in the world, or the richest family in the world, they don't brag about how much money they got.
And you don't know who they are.
They're not on the TV all the
No.
time. So it's always the guy behind the guy
Yeah.
is so it's kind of like they want you to believe, and it does really feel like that. I know a lot of people who are not in the Little Season community have often talked about Elon having like Antichrist vibes,
Yeah.
which I believe he does kind of have that spirit of Antichrist. But it does almost seem like they're trying to make Elon Musk out to be like Tony Stark, like Iron Man.
Yeah.
He's this sarcastic billionaire playboy who kind of just does what he wants, and he does, like, the way he talks to people. It's like the way he kind of clowns on Twitter. It's like he's like the real life Tony Stark, but to me it does feel like this guy's playing a role
Oh,
in
absolutely.
order to be that. So it's like we make Robert Downey Jr. make Iron Man like the coolest Marvel character, and then we
Mhm.
have this guy who sounds a lot like him, who has like the same attributes as this guy
Yeah.
in real life. And I think maybe is that the subtle programming of like the predictive programming of like a real Iron Man guy.
Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah, and like I'm gonna piggyback off what you said too about the people who have the real money. You don't know their names, and I mean, I know a lot of people talk about like the Rothschilds and stuff, but I've had people on the podcast that talk about some family called like the Orsinis or something.
Well,
I think.
I
Have you
think
heard of
that's
them?
what. Yeah, I think that's what the Rothschild's name was before. It's like they've had different names.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, so this guy's named Eric Phelps, and he wrote Vatican Assassins, and he has, like, a lot of good information on Jesuit history, which is very interesting, and he wrote the book called Vatican Assassins, and he's talking about that there's people that are what he used was deca-quadrillionaire, whatever that means. Like,
That's hard to fathom.
yeah, but that's a word he used, and I'm like, "Can you say that again?" And yeah, it's like money that you can not even fathom. Like these people and they own real money. They probably have gold and stuff,
Yeah.
not a bunch of little paper,
Yeah,
that
they got more than just numbers on a computer screen. They
exactly.
actually have wealth.
They got assets.
Yeah. 100%.
Exactly. Exactly right.
Yeah, but anyways, I guess, do you want to talk about that anymore? You want to talk about anything else? Obviously, we have some more topics we could hit, or do you want to continue to
Yeah.
talk more about Facebook and or TikTok?
Well, I'm curious because we were talking a little bit about the psychology side of it. I don't know
Okay.
if we were going live right there or not, but it's just interesting. Oh yeah, we were because we were talking about them gathering information. They're just really interested in the
Mhm.
psychology of the mind and like how far can we press? How much can we push people to their own limits to where they would actually go against their own will in order to like under the pressures of an authority figure, which is in a sense that's what happened to these people in 2020 who who did something in order to keep their jobs, and that was pressure. It's do this or else that, and they're like, oh well, I can't lose my job, so I guess I gotta get it. So it's just that kind of thing,
Mhm.
what and the people that were solid, they're like, "No, I'm not taking that, fire me." They got
Mm,
fired, and then they're like, "Hey, we're sorry. Can you come back and
yeah.
we're gonna back pay you and all this stuff." And it's just like, well, yeah, I mean, look what happened when they had principle, they stood on their principle, and they didn't budge no matter what, even if they did have some major consequences. But you know what? I believe that if you do the right thing, whether it be hard, but if it's the right thing and it's God's will and it's pleasing to God, then ultimately, it's written that all things are work out for the good to those that love God and are the called according to this purpose. And you know what? Even as much as we don't like to think about it, but I mean, everyone's gonna die at some point. But I mean, even if they kill you and you lose your body, I mean, Jesus talked about that too. Don't worry about that. Worry about where your soul goes.
Yeah,
But
right. Hmm.
but the point is just always doing the right thing no matter what the cost is. And I think God will take care of you. And like people will say, well, oh, like we were talking about the martyrs and stuff, and I was talking to you last time about John Wycliffe. He got burnt at the stake, and it's just like, oh yeah, God really helped him out there, but it's just like,
Hmm.
no, but he still won. It's just like,
Yeah.
you can't kill us. I mean, it's just that's the beauty of it. And ultimately, if it's not your time, like nothing's gonna be able to come in your way at all. I believe that.
Yeah. So, Visionary Veg says, any recommendations for new video editing app? No, I don't actually have any yet, because that's what I was just lamenting to Ricardo on before he came on, that I was messing around with like three of them, and I'm definitely not trying to spend a lot of money. That Lord willing, the CapCut will be reinstated soon, and I've already paid for that app. But obviously, I don't want to invest a bunch of money into another app that I have to learn in the
Right.
meantime. So, I mean, I'd like to just be able to use that one. Maybe I'm still holding out hope that it does get reinstated this week, so then I can still continue to make content like I normally do. No, but if somebody mentioned UCut, I may have to look into that.
You cut. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if
Yeah,
it's
send them out because we need to check out something.
yeah, we need, as soon as we get off this, I probably have to continue to research that. No, that's good. I mean, I think that, yeah, like somebody was asking this the other day. I got asked this question about, like, kind of everyone always questions like God's character when they're saying, why would God allow all this pain and suffering and all these bad things to happen? You're like, but you're really only looking at a very small part of the picture, because like if God's has eternity promised to us,
Hmm.
he's kind of like, would you make somebody go through something very difficult to eventually give them an eternal reward? So I mean, it's like that. I think that that's where God sees all things, and so it's not because he's callous; it's because he has something better promised for us. So like, yeah, it's kind of like people saying, "Oh well, yeah, all these martyrs, they did all only thing they did what God said to do, and then they were killed for it." And it's like, so that's it. It's like, but if you believe that, that that's not it. And you can only imagine how much more rewarded martyrs are than somebody who lives a great life as far as the world's concerned, right? Like having all the comforts of this world, and then dying, even being a righteous person.
Yeah.
Like what is the reward after that versus the people like Jeremiah and the prophets who really suffered and did all the hard things without getting the earthly reward. Obviously, Jesus made it clear that when you get your reward here, it's not in heaven. So if you're not getting your reward here, then it is in heaven. So God knows better than us. And yeah, so like obviously, yeah, you do have to think past all this stuff all the time, because I mean that's part of being a Christian, is like looking toward the eternal and not focusing on the flesh and the suffering so much.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, just going back, because I had said all that just to say about the psychology of people, like what is it that presses people to do certain things and under certain pressures. And whether we believe it or not, guys, these people are seriously interested in that type of thing, because if you can control someone that way without, like, you could basically herd a group of people without any force. That's the whole point. It's just like, oh yeah, before they did it by force, and now it's just like they mess with your mind, and they're genuinely interested in making our brain like mashed potatoes, where you can't figure anything out, and we're beginning to figure that out, aren't we?
Yeah, but it's interesting, the psychology of all this stuff as you were talking about it, is because we did that podcast on the three-letter agencies, and it's funny, I did not play the clip on that show because it's a movie clip from Captain America: Winter Soldier. Did you see that reel
Mhm.
I made, Ricardo?
How long ago is it?
I mean, I think I posted it probably last week, the beginning of last week. So it was like something I saved,
Mm,
but I could post it on like Instagram, because there's not really no monetization on there. But it's really interesting. So if you guys haven't seen that movie, it's it really tells you a very true story through the fiction about Operation Paperclip and the
Mm,
scientists that came over. So obviously, you guys can look this up about all the experiments they were doing in Germany in the 30s and the 40s. And then those scientists came over here to do the same thing. And I think that's obviously the early stages of things like MK Ultra, where they were trying to learn how to manipulate people in certain kinds of ways, implanting false
yeah,
memories, getting them to do things they don't want to do, all kinds of things like that. And so I think that that kind of knowledge has been used all over the place. Now, what was really fascinating in that movie is how on the nose, like they just straight up say that like, so in the Captain America, it's like you have the shield. So
hmm,
shield's kind of like the secret agency that does everything to protect us. Is the kind of spy agency intel community. And then you
like the
had
shadow
in
government.
yeah, and yeah, exactly, your deep state. And then you have on the German side, it was called Hydra. And so
Yeah.
Hydra was, the bad guys from World War II, right? And so they came over here. And so so the one guy who's kind of doing the monologue telling Captain America all the things, he was like, "How did you get here?" And he's like, "I was invited." And then what's it, Scarlet or no, what's her name?
Black Widow.
Black Widow was like, "Yeah, Operation Paperclip. These guys came over in the 40s and blah blah." And he was like saying how they grew a perfect parasite inside Shield. So Hydra basically became Shield, and
Hmm.
since then they've been directing world events to basically kind of break humanity's will. And it was
Yeah.
really interesting because it was saying they learned a lot through the war, because if you try to fight, you try to take people's freedom from there, like physically, then they'll resist. But
Yeah.
when you can make the world so chaotic, they're going to beg for security. And then, and thus they'll lose that freedom. And then through that, they were going to build their new world order. And I was just like, I've seen that movie before, but when I watched it again, I was like,
Yeah.
man, that they are just telling you exactly what they're happening. But I mean, but the whole point of that was it was the psychology of it. It's like, it's kind of like the cooking of the frog. So if you
Right.
turn up the water slowly, you'll boil the frog. If you turn it right up, frog will jump out. And
Yeah.
it's like that is what they're doing. And you can only imagine through these social media apps where I said at the very least they're programming you to have a short attention span, but at the same time, they're probably learning a ton about you too, like through
Yeah.
like what kind of videos you watch, how long you watch them. I mean, the analytics they probably have on each individual person now is probably. I mean, it's scary, it's incredible, but I mean, yeah. So to what end are they going to use this information one day, or how are they using it right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to share this with you. I'm going to share my screen with you real quick. Can you see that?
Yeah. Huh?
Okay, so I was talking to you off air about the Milgram experiment, and so I just wanted to kind of read this right here because honestly, this is what we're talking about, how they're interested in the psychology of people and like how far can you push people to their absolute limits? And this study just says a whole lot about the human psychology. And so I'll just go right here. It says one of the most famous studies of obedience in psychology was carried out by Stanley Milgram in 1963. Stanley Milgram, a psychologist at Yale University, conducted an experiment focusing on the conflict between obedience to authority and personal conscience. He examined justifications for facts of genocide offered by those accused at the World War to Nuremberg war criminal trials. Their defense was often based on obedience, that they were just following orders from their superiors. So, if you remember that, and we've talked about this in past podcasts as well, that that was not a good enough excuse. It wasn't good
Mm-hmm.
enough to where
Mm.
you said, "Oh, well, I was just doing my job." It's like, no, that's not a good enough excuse. So, it just because of that, they were using this experiment, like, well, it happened to them. They got pushed to their absolute limits to basically go against our own conscience and violate our conscience in order to submit ourselves to an authority figure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how what kicked this off. And it says He examined justifications for acts of this offered by those accused at World War II Nuremberg war criminal trials. Their defense was often based on obedience, that they were just following orders from the, okay, I read that already, didn't I?
Mm,
So it says the experiments began in July 1961, a year after the trial of Adolf Eichmann.
mhm,
Milgram devised the experiment to answer the question, could it be that Eichmann and his million accomplices in the were just
mm,
following orders? Could we call them all accomplices? Milgram wanted to investigate whether these guys were particularly obedient to authority figures, as this was common explanation for the this uh, and then this in World War II. So, so the aim of this, it says, so Milgram was interested in researching how far people would go in obeying an instruction if it involved harming another person. He wanted to know how easily ordinary people could be influenced into committing atrocities. For example, what they did in World War II. And so this is kind of what we're getting down to, like what can you absolutely push people to do? And they're absolutely interested in this. And so this is how the procedure went. It goes on to say Milgram selected participants for his experiment by newspaper advertising for male participants to take part in a study at Yale University. Volunteers were told they would participate in a lab experiment investigating learning. Participants were 40 males aged between 20 and 50 whose jobs range from unskilled to professional from the New Haven era. They were paid $4.50 for just showing up. So I guess that was a lot back then. So so what we get out of this, there's 40 male participants between the ages of 20 and 50, and they got paid to participate in this. At the beginning of the experiment, they were introduced to another participant who was actually a Confederate of Milgram. Oh, so there's a twist. There's actually only 20 people. So half of them were in on the experiment unknowingly. So this is interesting. And it says they drew straws to determine their roles. So it's like this random act. It's like, oh, who's the learner or who's the teacher? But it was all fixed from the beginning. Oh, and that's what it says here. Although this was fixed and the Confederate was always the learner. So it didn't matter if you picked learner or teacher, somehow the 20 that were in on it, they were always the learner, right?
mhm,
Okay. And then it says, there was another Confederate dressed in a gray lab coat and playing the role of experimenter, not Milgram. Okay. So, two rooms in the Yale Interaction Laboratory were used, one for the learner with an electric chair, and another for the teacher and experimenter with an electric chair with an electric shock generator. The learner was taken into the first room and had electrodes attached to his arm, and the teacher and researcher went into the room next door that contained the electric shock generator. So, if anyone's not following, the person who didn't know that this was already fixed, they were in a separate room with a fake shocker, and then the person who was in on it was in the other room in an electric chair, and they're literally giving them electric shocks in this chair because the what did they call him, the experimenter right here, the
mhm.
experimenter was telling them to do it. And so they were actually shocking these people, which is crazy. And and so we go on to say, after Mr. Wallace, the learner had studied a list of words pairs given him to learn. The teacher would then test him by naming a word and asking the learner to recall its partner pair from a list of four possible choices. So the teacher was then told to administer an electric shock every time the learner makes a mistake. So it's like, oh, he made a mistake. You got to shock him. This is what you have to do. This is what you have to do. Increasing the level of shock each time. There were 30 switches on the shock generator marked from 15 volts, slight shock, to 375 volts, danger, severe shock, to 450. And that's absolute death right there.
Gosh.
So So the learner gave mainly wrong answers on purpose, and for each of these, the teacher gave him an electric shock. When the teacher refused to administer a shock, the experimenter was to give a series of orders called prods. So he didn't force him to do anything, he's just prodding him, okay, to ensure they continued. There were 4 prods, and if one was not obeyed, then the experimenter read out the next prod and so on. So, prod 1, please continue. Prod 2, the experiment requires you to continue. Prod 3, it is absolutely essential that you continue. Prod 4, you have no other choice but to continue. You've already come this far. There's no choice. We got to keep going. And this is the incredible results, and it'll blow your guys' minds, but check this out. 65%, which is 2/3 of the participants, the teachers, continued to the highest level of 450 volts. All of the participants, all of the other participants continued to 300 volts. So 300, if you remember, that's like in between, that's around severe shock. Is 375 was severe.
Hmm.
So Milgram did more than one experiment. He carried out 18 variations of this study with all with similar findings, and he did was alter the situation to see how this affected obedience. So this is just absolutely crazy if you think about it, that 65% of people actually pushed a button that they knew was gonna kill someone, and they still did it. They still did it because the authority figure was telling them to do it. It's just it's crazy that they can get into someone's minds like that, and that's what we're still dealing with right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think without going too much into detail, I think everyone remembers in 2021 and 2020
Mhm.
all the things that were not allowed to happen, and then the certain authorities that would just, well, I'm just doing what we're supposed to do, and they'd be shutting certain businesses down and just not letting people go into like the gym. I remember the one example is, what do you remember, like in California there was like a guy, like, was he paddleboarding out in the middle of the ocean,
Yeah,
and
he
they,
was, like, surfing or something.
yeah, it's like he was all by his lonesome, and it's like that they had to drag that guy to shore and basically beat the crap out of him to
Yeah.
get him to submit. And it's like, yeah, well, who's wrong in that situation? Well, they were just doing what they were told to do. But I mean, at some point, yeah, like, yeah, the Nuremberg defense is not a defense. I mean, that's basically what that means, is that you can't, like, when you're violating the laws of humanity,
Mhm.
crimes against humanity, it's like it's not a good enough excuse to say, well, somebody else told me to do it first. But yeah, you can see it over and over again that that literally is what will happen. Though, it's like that there's enough people that are influenced, and it's very difficult to stand up against your boss when you're being forced to do something that's unethical. Because yeah, like, I think it's obviously is the psychology of it, and it's like it's proven. I mean, I do think that that's why, like, they, when certain kinds of like things, probably like NASA and whoever's going to be an astronaut, it's like certain people are not really as susceptible to this kind of programming. I'd like to think that I'm not, because I do question lots of things. But
Yeah.
there's a high percentage of the population that questions nothing. And
Yeah.
you call them NPCs, call them whatever you want to. I think that that phenomenon is pretty deep if you really think about it, or maybe it could be.
Yeah.
We were talking about on one of the JT's mixtapes, Brian and I, about how there's a very large percentage of the population that does not have an inner monologue. And to me, that was like horrifying. Like, what do you mean they don't have an inner monologue? Because I just thought that was thinking. Like, because I don't even know what that even means to not have one. And then but it does make a lot of sense when you see how quickly people just believe the news. They just go along with the new thing. They support all the right causes, and even if they're
Mhm.
really contradictory to what they used to do, it is frightening that, like, these people really are just being led around just like sheep to the slaughter.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, you just brought up how, people oh, man, I just lost my train of thought there. Go ahead. I might think about it. Sorry, man.
No, no, I mean, yeah,
It
I mean,
might
so
come
I
back to
think
me.
no, so I do think that like that's what people like have experienced. And I was saying like I remember when I broke it down after the Olympics when everyone had saw the mockery of the Last Supper, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, no, that actually wasn't the mockery of the Last Supper. This was about Dionysus. And I was like, to me, it made me think of like the prestige and how magic was presented in that movie, where it was not really magic like making a bunny disappear. It was like making somebody want to see a bunny disappear in order to trick them. So they want to see magic. They don't really realize that the magic is happening on you.
Yeah.
It's not on the stage. It's in between here is where they're doing the magic. So they're changing your consciousness. And like that's literally like Kabbalistic magic. Because
Yeah.
that's like what the Lester Crowleys of the world will say is like that's magic. Is like changing your mind in some kind of way. But the truth of the matter is like these people want to be fooled. And why?
Yeah.
It's because they love the flesh and they want the things of the flesh and they want to be able to continue to live the same ways they always have. Whatever's comfortable for them.
Yeah. I remember what I was gonna say. So, like, just you had mentioned that, you could be deceived on something, and you hope that you're not susceptible to that. But I feel like, in a sense, we all are, and we all have been, and that's like the breaking of like the indoctrination is what we've been going through, like what I've been going through, like the past. Um, oh man, it's been a long time, like
Hmm.
at least 10 years, um just unlearning a lot that was just fed to us, and it's just a lot of stuff. It's just like, this is how it is, and you guys have to believe it. Even the doctrines that had been handed down to us in the Bible, like, we inherited those doctrines, like it wasn't something that we learned. And so, like, just knowing that, like, I can be deceived, so that's why we have to be extra vigilant, knowing that they are trying to mess with our minds. And that's a point that I was trying to come up with, like, so for anyone out there, you think, "Oh, well, you guys got it all wrong," and it's not like that, it's like this, it's like, no, we're not, like, intentionally saying the wrong thing, it's just we're doing the best we can with the information we have. But it's a shame that some people in this community that we're trying to build, in a sense, that they would automatically think ill of someone else just for some random reason, if that makes sense. Like, oh, they must be a shill because they they're getting good at editing or something, or they're a shill because they put out a lot of videos, and they got a big following, so they can't be real. Or they're another, I heard, like, oh, well, I don't trust any YouTube channel that gets monetized. And it's just like, what's the purpose of that? Like, you guys hadn't spoke to JT or I, probably, most likely, and automatically these people assume the worst of us just because, like I said at the beginning, we're friends, hey, we
Hmm.
like to talk, and we just get on here and talk because, guys, we don't have fellowship. That's the whole point
Yeah.
why we get
Hmm.
on here. And but it's sad, the cynicism of some people.
Yeah. No, obviously I've experienced it as as my channel's grown on TikTok and all the other ones where like that. I mean, I would say that I try to make it clear that this is my level of understanding at this point. And I've changed my mind about certain things. And I've always leave a little bit of room to not be too sure about things I can't be sure about until I am. And so, yeah, but yeah, obviously there's people who, yeah, I mean, it's putting yourself out here like we do is not always real easy because it
No.
is like, I mean, I think there's a pride thing too. It's like when you come out and you say something that you believe to be true, and then later you have to come back and say you're wrong. So like that sometimes I'm not as far out there as some people have. And it's like that probably some of the reasons why people like me is the reasons they don't like me later when I don't agree with them right away. Right? Because they like it when I'm questioning this other person like that. But when I start questioning them in that same way, like that, I'm still not going to go over to your opinion just because you said trust me.
Exactly.
Because I don't trust I heard that I don't really trust anybody but God. So,
Yeah.
even my own self. So yeah, I mean, it's a shame when people do try to sow division. I think that's all it really is like that trying to
Mhm.
say like you're this and you're that. And so therefore we don't trust you. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not telling you to trust me full on, but I said, if you if you think that as Christians we should be judged on our fruits, and if you think that
Mhm.
if my fruit is wrong, then maybe obviously that'll be evident to people, like, to not trust me.
Absolutely.
It's like, because I think that's the main thing. There's a lot of people with good information, but they don't have the fruits, and I think that those people will definitely lead you astray, or they're not teaching them more important things. Because it's like what does it say in was it 1 Corinthians 13 when it's talking about love, and it's
Mhm.
talking about you could have all the knowledge, you could have all the mysteries, and it
Yeah.
won't matter unless you have love. And I think that's the way this community should really be trying to hold people accountable,
Yeah, and
not in
it's
the ways of material things.
yeah, and it's already a divisive subject already as it is, and there's no reason why we should be creating little subgroups within this already small group. Like, why are we doing that? Like, if there's a problem, I mean, you can find pretty much any one of our information, contact us. You want to talk? I'll talk to you.
Mhm.
Whatever, you know? It's just it's sad that people automatically assume the worst of you just because they see your face out there. And it's crazy. It's sad.
God bless you, short seasonist. That's amazing. You don't ever have to do that, but I appreciate it when you do. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't like to bring up the people who don't like us too much, because it's just like there's always, because I think that only adds more fuel to their fire. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that we try to be our own worst critics at times, and obviously maybe we don't do a good enough job about that. But we're trying to bring this information to you, and again, it's like also, I'm trying to bring you regular content, so it's like sometimes like I've learned a ton of new stuff. It's like, it's the balance of trying to like research and then make videos and go work your day job and then have a family and all that stuff at the same
You
time.
don't have any time left.
Well, it's tough. I mean, because I think overall, I think the main thing is, like, I guess, our interaction with the people in the community, because it's always just about the people, right? So I think that's probably why I like to do more live streams and try to interact with you guys, because I think that's the most fun part for me. And let's talk a little bit. Maybe we'll go about 15 more minutes, because we didn't really
Yeah.
plan on going on today. But I want to maybe tease a little current, future topics. Not necessarily this is brand new, but I got this book, and of course it's probably backwards for you guys, but
No,
it's
it's not.
by
Not on my end.
Howdy Mikowski. Did I butcher his name? And it's exposing the expositions 1851 to 1915.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so it's all about the World Fair stuff. So I read John Levi's book about the evidence of the old world. I know somebody brought Howdy up in the comments, and I think that when I was first talking about old world stuff, one of the first person that people brought up was him. And I remember I followed him, I subscribed to his channel, and then I found John Levi through him. And of course, I didn't, I kind of more like went watched all John Levi's videos. But yeah, this is super interesting, because I think that I really do.
Does it have any pictures on there too, or is it just all
It's got some.
text?
It's got some. It doesn't have as many,
Okay.
but maybe I haven't. I literally just got it today, so I'm gonna dig through that thing. But I was really thinking about, like, with the view of, like, Gunnar Heinsohn's work in the stratigraphy. I
Mhm.
really do think, like, so there is some World Fair buildings that supposedly survived from the World Fairs. And I think it's really interesting to think about, like, the science of the stratigraphy, right? So if these buildings were built when they said they were built, wouldn't they be built all at the same level as other buildings? I think that that's almost like you could really kind of hold these people to account
Yeah.
when you have an a World Fair building built in the 1900s, and then it's mud flooded, right? Because that means the actual strata tells the real story of, like, when this building was built. Because then you could go around, I mean, you could literally go around the world and see what's on the similar strata, because then you could basically date it to the same time period.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, is that our smoking gun of saying, like, we got them? There's no way you built a
Yeah.
temporary building with a basement in it. I don't. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
You wouldn't. So I do think the more I'm going to do this, actually, believe it or not, there was a World Fair in Norfolk, Virginia, and it was called the Jamestown Exhibition. I think that was It might have been. I'm not sure. It might have been 1905 or 1895 or something, somewhere in that range.
Hmm.
But yeah, like that's really not very far from where I'm at. But unfortunately, I think that where the majority of where the exhibition was at like this gigantic military base now. It's over in it's Norfolk Naval Base, which is like the biggest Navy base in the world, or at least it used to be. So I'm like, I'd love to be able to go find evidence of that exhibition, because it is crazy when you do look up the World Fair things and you're like, they were in so many places,
Yeah,
so many of them.
yeah, yeah, and uh, I've been looking into a lot of Gunnar Heinsohn's videos too, and I'm working on something right now too. What's up, kitty?
Yeah, we got a new kitty, and she's cute, but she's real bad because
Yeah,
she's like romper room at
m-
2 a.m. last night.
my daughter loves cats, but she's allergic. It breaks her heart. She puffs up. No, but I'm making a video about him right now, just kind of breaking down that conversation he had on that one podcast, and it's fascinating. I do think it is the smoking gun, to answer your question, because it's proof, and even like some of these Roman things that are dug up, they're not even that far under the ground if you think about it. I mean, for it to be that far back, and there was supposedly two more collapses after that one, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the thing. It's like there could be things that are Roman-esque, and there's things that are not. And I think maybe the stratigraphy just tells the true story, because it just tells you when they were built. Because we would already know that they would not have dug out to the previous level of strata in order to build the building.
Yeah,
You know,
man.
so like I think that, to me, that makes sense. It's like that was Gunnar Heinz's conclusion in Europe. But the one thing I said, that gosh, this is the real shame of like the fact that he died in 2023. I would love to ask him that, as saying like, so what do you conclude about the strata in America? Like, where does that, like, if these buildings are built on certain levels, wouldn't you have to conclude the timeline of America is wrong? You know, and how and where does that conversation go? Because I think
Yeah,
that's what I believe, is that it does seem like that there was, in some places in Europe, the stratigraphy says that it's like there's literally like 45 feet of strata on top of whatever this was. And then so like in America, I don't know, but if you do see those pictures of like Seattle when they started digging the cities out, there's 100% like 45 feet. I
wow.
mean, now the old city under Seattle does not look Romanesque, but it is weird. So I mean, it's like, to me, unless you could really show me another cataclysm, or if they would ever admit that there was something that did that all around all of America, then what am I to conclude other than, yeah, it had to happen around the same time it happened to Rome?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I want to show you something. So when I'm when I was making or doing the research of this video that I'm doing, I was just kind of looking at different structures throughout the world, and I wanted to share with you my absolute favorite one that I've seen ever.
Okay,
So
sure.
it's pretty cool. Um, right. Check this out, bro. And it's like in the ground too.
Oh yeah, yeah. That
It's
one
in
looks straight out of a movie,
It
doesn't it?
does. Watch, look at this. Let me see if I could zoom it. Look at that, bro. It's like in like it's buried, half buried, you know?
Hmm.
It's like half buried, and then the bridge, it's just I was looking at this thing yesterday. I was like, "Wow.
Yeah,
That thing
that looks like
is
a fairy
fat."
tale. That looks like a fairy tale,
Look at
right?
that. Look at that. That's incredible. And this one is it's called La Lajas Sanctuary.
Is
I
that
know
in
that
Spain or is that in South America?
it's in where was it? Colombia. So yeah,
Yeah, how does that make sense there?
Colombia. Yeah. So I'm gonna stop sharing now. But yeah, it doesn't make sense. Because my point of the video is that it doesn't make any sense. Why is this in this location? And it looks like the same exact builders built it way over here. It's just everywhere. There's no explanation for it.
No, well, no, there's no good explanation for it. I mean, obviously they'll just say, well, they were harder workers than us. That's what they always say in my comments. It's like, oh, you can't imagine because you couldn't imagine working that hard. I'm like, you're right, but I don't see anybody doing that. I can't imagine me doing it. No, I can't imagine you doing it either. And that's not a slight on you. It's
Yeah.
just like it's a very similar conversation. I often bring this up is like the same way that like the pyramids and stuff. And they're like, "Oh, we could do that today." And I was like, "Well, we don't."
Yeah.
So to me it's like, "Well, why don't we do it?" They build glass pyramids. They built a pyramid in Las Vegas. They built one in Memphis, but they ain't like the other ones. Why
Yeah, and
not? Why didn't they just build them like that?
yeah, and there I was looking up yesterday too, like there's some other cathedral things that are an absolute joke. Like there's one, it's called the Metropolitan Cathedral of Rio de Janeiro. And let me see if I could share this with you real quick. Just because you can see like this is what they build today. It's not anything like what we're talking about. So it was called de Janeiro. Is that what I said?
Mhm.
Okay. Cathedral. Let's see. Mm, and they all got Catholic names too. Else is interesting. A lot of them, like in
Well,
Spanish and stuff. It's
I think that's they attribute everything to like the Spanish coming down there and building all that, but it seems like it seems kind of weird almost to the timeline too. It's like how powerful the Spanish were for a brief time, right? Like as far as like the colonization of
hmm
the New World, and it's just like all of a sudden they were just like, what happened to them? Even
yeah,
by the times of World War II, they were not relevant at all.
yeah. You could see this though. Like that's the cathedrals that they're building today. Like it's not,
What is that?
it's a cathedral in Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah, it doesn't quite have the same kind of aesthetic
No,
as
no,
the other ones that
no. But that's the point is that they're not. They don't make them like they used to.
because they
That's
can't.
it because they can't. Yeah, that's the
Because they
point.
can't. I think to me that is another really suspicious thing about like the all the old world buildings in South America. It really doesn't make sense that like countries like Bolivia. I remember back in the day, my church was doing mission trips to Bolivia, and they would just talk about the just how poor that place was.
Yeah.
But go ahead and look at the buildings in Bolivia, and
Hey,
there's old world ones there too. And so it's
hey,
kind of like, what's the disconnect? That they have these incredible buildings that obviously, again, like the timeline would say they're not that old. So they
yeah,
obviously had a credible wealth at some point to build that, and then one day they just had nothing because they do
yeah,
have nothing. Like those places are extremely poor.
bro. I had a light bulb moment yesterday too. Whenever I was looking at all these buildings, if you remember when the disciples were saying, "Look at these manner of buildings," look,
Hmm.
like just picture it now that they were looking at stuff like that, and I could understand why they marvel at it because look at what we're doing. It's just if you think about it in a different perspective, it's just like, wow. Yeah, they were marveling at this stuff.
Well, it's funny because they were marveling about the temple, but then even Jesus said, "You see these buildings," because he's talking
Exactly.
about buildings plural. He wasn't just talking about the temple when he
Mhm.
said that. So I do believe that the way Jerusalem's always described in the Bible, it's in a very impressive city, like
Yeah.
extremely. So it would have been impressive as any kind of Roman city would have been impressive. So you could imagine, like, so Jesus is from Nazareth, and so the disciples are from Galilee. They're probably from really poor places in Israel, and so there's obviously one major city in all of the land of Judah, and it's Jerusalem, and
Mhm.
it's got super tall walls. It's crazy. It probably was way more impressive. Probably if you ever see depictions of it, like in your Bible or any kind of illustrations of what it looked like, it probably is nothing like it actually looked. It probably was. It was probably amazing until the Romans came in and destroyed almost all of it.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
I always think it's really interesting to think too, is like, so how did the Romans destroy these megalithic type buildings? They must have had some incredible
Yeah.
weapons to do that.
Exactly. Well, if you're ready to get off, I think I am, but honestly, I was gonna say one more thing that I was excited about.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Shoot. Yeah,
I
and we'll conclude.
I ordered a Geneva Bible and it should be coming in on Monday. So I'm gonna start like kind of looking into that more. I had a lot of people in the comments and I've been wanting to get one anyway, so I think that's pretty cool to check it
No,
out.
that's awesome. You know, it's funny. I had my maybe I'll just bring out no, hold on one second.
Yeah. No, I'll talk. Yeah, and so I got the Geneva Bible and it supposedly, I guess it has 165 books in it, which is insane because if you think about it, like our English Bible, it has 66 books. So it's almost missing 100 books. You know, it's including the Book of Giants, the Book of Eli, the Book of Jasher, just all the Apocrypha. I was saying that in this one that I bought, it has 165 books in it, including the Geneva Bible.
Oh
And
wow,
and
cool.
it's got, like, the Book of Giants and everything too.
You know, what I wanted, I went over there yonder to show you guys this.
Oh, that's beautiful. Where'd you
Yeah,
get that?
this was like kind of a family heirloom, and I think this is like from 18.
What? What is it?
It's a King James Bible, and I remember I did a video about this like a while back because it's like it's got some crazy illustrations. It's really old, so it's kind of hard to show all of it, but it's
Is it
like,
fragile or no?
yeah, I mean it is. It's like it's beat up a little bit.
Oh, dude, I would love to look at that. That's so cool.
But yeah, it's kind of like when you see the old like a Geneva Bible would be really cool to get like a really old one, like
Yeah.
a real deal old Bible. But yeah, when you go through some of these things, it's like the illustrations in them and stuff. It's pretty epic to do it. It's funny because I made me think of that because you mentioned that. And Friday I re-released that video I had where I was like, so last year this time when I was reading back through Genesis, I read Genesis 1 and I was like, there's no way you can believe this and also believe the science we're taught.
Yeah, I saw
And so,
that.
so that was basically my video. And I was saying, like, you have to conclude that they're different if you take it to be literal. And so, obviously, I challenged everyone. I said, if you're intellectually honest, you can't choose both if you say it's literal. Obviously, some people will say it's metaphorical, allegorical. I don't believe that. Obviously, the scripture doesn't lead anyone to conclude that. I believe it's literal. And it is funny to get the reactions I got when I say that, because I think most people realize that I'm right, that you have to choose. Like, so you can believe whatever you want, but you can't intellectually honestly say you believe both
Yeah,
if you
you're right.
believe that the Bible's literal. And I think that then you get into like the people saying, because that was when I went in here, I said, yeah, I opened up to Genesis on here. And of
Yeah,
course it is cool. It is cool to see an old Bible and just see the pages and the way it's all written
it
and the way it
is.
is. And yeah, it's like people are like, oh, the Bible's not a science book. And it's like, well, it's either true or it's not. That's like, what do you
And
do? I think it's true. What do you guys think?
yeah, and even Gunner, they said it's not a science book, but what's crazy is Gunner and so many before him, they at least looked at it as a reliable historical document. If even if they didn't think it was God's word, it was a history book. So they believed at least that much. It was absolutely what happened in our past.
Yeah, Gunnar had an interesting take about things. And actually, I think that he disagrees with the dates in the Bible too. So like he's obviously
Um,
he's not somebody we're going to ever like just tout like believe him full cloth. But it was interesting that what he was saying and the way he kind of viewed all of it, he's saying like that all of history, he was saying like he doesn't throw out the stories, the history
exactly.
that's been handed down. He questions the dates of when they were, and he's saying like the
Mhm.
story's likely true. When it happened might be a little bit off. Now, obviously, to me, it's like certain biblical things there's really not a lot of wiggle room because if it has the genealogies that date the things to when they are. I guess the one thing that we would really be able to challenge in this view is that we don't really know how long ago Jesus was.
Yeah.
So then that leads us to believe, like, because it's funny because Gunnar takes away 700 years from the first millennia, but then guys like Fomenko take out time from like the recent hit, like from more like the last millennia.
Yeah, like, have you heard of that phantom theory now too, where that one, like, removes 200 years as well?
I have not. If you got information on that, I'd like to read about it.
That's about all I know. Someone, mentioned it in my comments, and I looked at it real quick, but apparently the phantom theory is another something like that, where it's like we got 200 years missing, so if you get the 2 and then not 7, you're getting closer to 1,000.
I know. So yeah, it's just almost like it would really be like that Jesus lived much closer to 1,000 years ago than 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Like way closer, like almost exactly. It's incredible. Of course, like I said, now I feel like that we're just scratching the surface still. Like we're gonna
Mhm.
this next year. Can you imagine like how much we learned in 2024 about
Yeah,
this stuff? It's like, yeah, 2025 can be exciting. I'm
I
excited,
agree.
regardless if we have TikTok or not.
Yeah. No, I'm excited too, bro, but I appreciate you having me on. It's always fun.
Of course, man. Obviously, you guys check out Contend for the Faith channel. That's where you get all the Question the Narrative podcasts. I'll leave, obviously, you get the link in the description, but I'll leave some more links for you guys. I really appreciate you guys. Obviously, God bless you guys who gave any super chats. You guys are amazing. And tomorrow night, obviously, it was a struggle, but I did get part one of JT's mixtape with Max from Parasite TV. And we're talking about Isaac Cappy. We're talking about the fires in California. We're talking about all kinds of interesting things. I think you guys will enjoy that. So, guys, stay tuned
Are
for
you
that.
sure that's not you?
I'm pretty
Are
sure.
you
I'm
are
pretty
you
sure.
Isaac Cappy, JT?
I don't know. We should ask Tyler.
Yeah, that
I
oh, I was just gonna say that. I'm like, we
was
should
like,
get
when?
Tyler to no, JT's Cappy.
I don't think I want to ask him because I think no, he's not actually Isaac Cappy. He'll say he's Jerry Lee Lewis or something.
Oh, it's always a blast, bro.
All right,
Take care,
guys.
brother.
Well, God bless you guys.
God bless.
See you guys tomorrow.
Later.
Okay, cut the stream here. Yeah, let me